as endorsed by United States Senator Lawrence Sherman from Illinois. By consultation of the Historical Collection of the Topsfield Historical Society, the Journals of Massachusetts, the paternal ancestor of Joseph Smith to have arrived in the New World was Robert Smith, an English Puritan who came from New England in 1638, and I will later show you an aristocrat. Joseph Smith's great-grandfather, Samuel Smith, a gentleman. When you say gentleman, it means an esquire or somebody who is landed gentry, was a member of the Massachusetts Council Court as a representative of Topsfield in Essex County. In other words, a landholder. Was later a member of the Essex County Convention, called to consider General Gage's hated proclamation and the Essex County representative in both the first and the second colonial congresses of Massachusetts. He also was chairman of the local tea committee, member of the Massachusetts Committee on Safety during the Revolutionary War, etc., while his son, Azazel Smith, Joseph Smith's grandfather, of the Prophet, was a captain of the Minutemen who marched on Lexington Alarm and also to the siege of Boston. Lucy Mack's mother. And I want to emphasize that being a member of the Massachusetts legislature meant you had to be landed gentry. You were not some kind of refuse that the Eber, Howe, and Ingersoll are trying to convey. He came from a very notable and influential family from Massachusetts and New York area. Anyway, let's go on to Lucy Mack, who even has a more illustrious pedigree than Joseph Smith. Lucy Mack, mother of Joseph Smith, was a direct descendant of John Mack, Scotch carpenter who came to New England to escape religious persecution and founded the noted Lynn, Connecticut Mack family. And religious persecution we're talking about, they were Jewish. Lucy Mack's father, Solomon Mack, was born in 1752, was a member of the Israel Putnam's Company in the French and the Indian War, and afterwards arrived in the Revolution. John Howard Todd, A.B. Randall Pariah, and other historians of merit have erroneously accused Joseph Smith of being of low origin, but the above cited pedigree shows he was of some of the best Smith families of Topsfield, Massachusetts. They were the Curtises, the French, the Goulds, the Town, and the Smith families. While on the distaff side, which is the Lucy Mack side, they were the Macks, the Colbys, the Huntleys, the Loomis, the Gates, the Cone, the Olmsted, the Brainard, and the Spencer family. Spencer, Diana Spencer, yes, a blue blood from England. All noted not only for their distinguished Crusader, Puritan, or Covenanter ancestry of noble blood, but uncompromising principles, but also for their prominence as founders of the New England colonies, officers and soldiers in the colonial and Indian wars. And I just want to tell you, this is what held all early Mormons together, that they were early settlers pre-Civil War, 1640, exiled under Charles I, beheading. And then they, Cromwellians sent over all these Anabaptists, polygamous, Puritans, polygamous, Calvins, polygamous, and the Campbellites, polygamous, and the Cochranites, polygamous. I mean, everybody was in such an upheaval, not because of the Smith and the Mack family, but because of the infiltrator chaos makers called Brigham Young, Quorum of the 12. And these were the border ruffians that were pro-slavery. Well, the Smith and the Mack family were notable blue blood families and anti-slavery advocates. You may criticize me for trying to emphasize the pedigree of the Smith and Mack families, but I'm just trying to reverse all the misinformation about the Smith and Mack families as being penniless miscreants of low birth. This is what the Utah Mormon Church has perpetuated for over 200 years. And the truth is the exact opposite. The Smith and Mack families were very influential, notable families, well respected by even the luminaries Abraham Lincoln and Stephen Douglas. So what does U.S. Senator Sherman from Illinois endorse as the real history? Well, he states and endorses Senator O.F. Berry in his lecture before the Illinois State Historical Society in 1906, which states, page 89 and 90, in the meantime, they were preaching against slavery. That's Joseph Smith. It is sufficient here to say that it is not strange that talking and preaching against slavery, as they did, both Hiram and Joseph, publicly and privately, they aroused the enmity of the Southern slaveholders, and they were driven out of Missouri. We know that. It was in all the newspapers. They were driven out for their anti-slavery activities from Missouri, not on account of their religious teachings in particular, but because of their political doctrines. And while I am informed that many of their ablest men insisted that it would be wise to refrain, we're talking about Parley P. Pratt, who was a pro-slaver incognito, refrain from teaching or preaching against the cruelty of slavery, most of the elders and the preachers refused to do so, and it resulted in great persecution and the final driving out of Missouri of the Smith and his followers. From there they came to Hancock County, which was their headquarters. Senator Berry continues, and he continues and says that the Mormons were eventually driven out of Illinois, and Hiram and Joseph Smith were murdered, assassinated due to their anti-slavery activities. A fact that the John DeLynns, the Utah State Universities, and the Utah Mormon Church have denied, concealed, and buried from history. They've done everything to try and wipe out the Joseph Smith, Hiram Smith anti-slavery activities, but they've been unable to do it because all of us now have the internet. We can do our own research. We don't need to rely on those who are paid to lie to us. So with that in mind, let's return to our deep research on the Smith and Mack family in Wikipedia that continues to show we're not of low birth, penniless miscreants, but they were indeed influential and highly respected families. Again, this is Stephen Mack Sr., Lucy Mack's uncle, who left her an inheritance which some believe started the Smith family Mormonism and even financed the Kirtland Temple. They also were the founding members of the Bank of Michigan. Stephen Mack. So in addition to being one of the most prominent members in the state of Michigan history, Stephen Mack also started the Bank of Michigan. He was a member of the Pontiac Company. He helped found Pontiac, Michigan. He was the founder of Pontiac, Michigan in 1880. He had a farm and a farm building firm, as well as a sawmill and a flour mill. He is said to, at his own expense, paid for the extension of the turnpike in Woodward Avenue, Pontiac, Michigan, then a major road in Detroit. He also built a sawmill in Rochester, Michigan, and ventures in Ohio. In 1820, Mack brought his family to Michigan. They briefly lived in Detroit before settling in Pontiac around 1822. In 1826, Mack died after an illness of 4 days. According to his sister, Lucy Mack, he left an estate valued at $50,000. Other sources report that there was an embezzlement scandal involving the cashier at the Bank of Michigan. This is debatable, but if true, $50,000 is probably in excess of $500,000 in today's term, and that would be quite an inheritance by Lucy Mack Smith from her uncle. The major thoroughfare Mack Avenue in Detroit was named after his son, John M. Mack, in 1855. So let's move forward to see Stephen Mack Jr., Hiram Smith's cousin, who attended Moore's Charity School, a prep school for Dartmouth. Okay, here is Stephen Mack Jr.'s entry. This is Stephen Mack Sr.'s son. He was born in 1798. Background, born in Turnbridge in 1798, son of Stephen and Temperance Bond. Stephen Jr. was the first cousin to Joseph Smith, the founder of the Latter-day Saint movement. Stephen Mack Jr. was engaged in the mercantile business in Turnbridge until 1807 when he went to Detroit, leaving his wife and family behind. The senior Mack valued education, knowing that there was little opportunity in the remote frontier village. He had his family remain in Vermont. The younger Mack would later pursue himself a level of education common for his time, and when he had children of his own, he was very active in procuring them the best educational opportunities. Stephen Mack Sr. was the first English-speaking merchant in Detroit. Stephen Jr. attended Moore's Charity School in a preparatory school at Hanover, New Hampshire, on August 13, 1813 to 1816. He attended the college at Boston, but then was forced to drop out due to minor illness. Now, Stephen Jr. attended Moore's Charity School along with his cousin Hiram Smith Jr. They were highly educated in religious studies with their great-grandfather there, who introduced the whole ancient language curriculum into the United States at Dartmouth College. But let's go on down. Mack was a clerk. On his arrival in 1823, he received his first license as a trader. While attending the Grand Detour, Stephen Mack met his wife, Hononegah. We do not know how they met. There is only a shadowy legend. Mack was sick, and Hononegah nursed him back and protected him from other Native Americans who were trying to harm him. It goes on down. They were founders of Pontiac, Michigan. By a treaty signed in Chicago at Potawatomi in September of 1833, Mack received $600 on behalf of his three daughters, purporting the belief that Hononegah was part of the Potawatomi tribe. After the war, Mack returned to his cabin to resume the trading operations. I'll let you read this in Wikipedia itself. Michigan has 3 high schools named after Hononegah. He was considered very influential historical figure. That was Stephen Mack Jr. and his wife Hononegah and their 3 offspring who were interracial Native American. In 1850, Winnebago County was formally divided into townships. In 1880, Mack Estate was owned by Sylvester Smith, probably a relative, and it continues.